Australian actor Julian McMahon has died after a private battle with cancer at the age of 56. His wife, Kelly, has confirmed the news in a statement to Hollywood publication.
Fireworks were supposed to light up the 4th of July sky in red, white, and blue glory. But this year, a single piece of news forced every screen in Times Square to dim for a moment of black-barred respect. Just 48 hours earlier, quietly, without fanfare or clickbait countdowns, Julian McMahon slipped away in a Florida hospice suite. No TMZ ambulances idled outside, no grainy paparazzi telephoto lenses tracked his window. He exited exactly the way he wanted, unseen, leaving millions to ask the same stunned question.
McMahon was best known for his roles in Nip Tuck, Charmed, and The Fantastic Four. Now, he most recently played an Australian politician in the Netflix series The Residents. McMahon was the son of former Australian Prime Minister Billy McMahon and lived the last few decades of his life in the US.
How could a man who once dominated cable TV and Comic-Con stages disappear so completely that even Hollywood's rumor mill had no clue he was dying? Tonight, we retrace the crash of that silent wave. The Prime Minister's son who fled Parliament expectations, the handsome demon who seduced 2000's fandom, the anti-hero surgeon who made viewers root for sin, and the private fighter who refused to surrender dignity for sympathy. The shockwave. It began at 6:07 a.m. Eastern Time on July 4th. Phones across North America chimed with a breaking news alert. Julian McMahon, star of Nip Tuck and Charmed, dies at 56.
Not a great deal, only that it was a fairly short episode that he had with cancer. And his wife has said he put up a pretty valiant fight against the disease, and obviously he succumbed to that. So we don't really have a great lot of detail on what sort of cancer or when he was actually diagnosed.
What some first dismissed as another internet hoax hardened into fact as Deadline, Variety, and The Hollywood Reporter issued identical confirmations. Within 15 minutes, Twitter's trending sidebar replaced hashtag July4Barbecue with hashtag RIP Julian McMahon, and Google's trend graph spiked 900% over holiday searches. Ryan Murphy posted a somber black and white still from Nip Tuck, calling him fearless, wickedly funny, and irreplaceable. Dylan Walsh followed with a broken heart emoji. Rose McGowan uploaded a backstage selfie from 1999 captioned, "My favorite demon." CNN cut parade coverage for an obituary reel. Australia's ABC interrupted cricket highlights to revisit the McMahon political dynasty.
Interestingly, he was only recently in a Netflix series called The Residents, where he actually played an Australian Prime Minister, which is kind of ironic considering he's actually the son of the late Billy McMahon, who was an Australian Prime Minister back in the early 1970s.
Shock amplified because not a whisper of illness had leaked. Subreddits opened mega threads. Thousands shared selfies from conventions and memories of Christian Troy's bravado inspiring their own body confidence journeys. Spotify streams of the Nip Tuck theme A Perfect Lie jumped 460%. Industry analysts later noted that McMahon's passing bridged generations. Millennials mourned an icon. Gen Z discovered him through algorithmic recommendations. And Sydney papers ran retrospectives titled The Son Who Outran Politics, pairing sepia childhood photos with glossy Hollywood stills. The layered narrative transformed a mere celebrity death into a symbol of radical self-reinvention. Political royalty rebels. To understand Julian's gift for disappearances, rewind to 1968 Sydney.
But Julian, his pedigree in Australia, he really was from a pretty high-profile family. His mother, Lady Sonia McMahon, she was a well-known socialite across the country.
Picture Kirribilli House, Australia's answer to the White House, bustling with cabinet receptions. The middle child of Prime Minister Sir Billy McMahon and socialite Lady Sonia learned early how to pose for headlines. Yet behind closed doors, he scaled fig trees, smuggled transistor radios to blast American rock, and sketched surfboards on parliamentary letterhead. Expectations weighed tons. Become a barrister, perhaps prime minister. Julian dutifully donned tailored blazers for school debates, then swapped them for denim once the driver's taillights vanished. When his father lost office in 1972, reporters prodded the teenager for political insight. He countered with surfer slang to deflect. University offered no refuge. He sampled law, flirted with economics, skipped lectures whenever Bondi had a decent swell, and ultimately dropped out to model Calvin Klein across Asia. Sydney tabloids branded him Playboy Dropout. Julian called it liberation. A Calvin Klein billboard in Times Square landed him a soap opera offer back home. The power, the passion, catapulting him from anonymous model to national TV heartthrob overnight. Yet, America lingered in his imagination.
And he was pretty close to his mum as well. And so for many years, he was a model and a sort of an actor working in Australian soap operas like Home and Away, and before that, some other ones, just sort of minor roles. But he was always kind of very popular guy, always out in the scene, very, very sort of amenable, nice guy.
By 1992, he relocated to Los Angeles, where guest spots on Profiler and a 3-year arc as Cole Turner on Charmed proved he could own U.S. screens. Industry analysts later noted his trajectory reflected a generational hunger for reinvention, while Sydney outlets juxtaposed political family portraits with Hollywood set photos, cementing him as the runaway prince of Kirribilli, ruler of Latveria. When 20th Century Fox cast him as Victor Von Doom, comic purists scoffed. Julian answered by studying monarchic history, burn victim psychology, and Doom's entire comic run. Fantastic Four opened to lukewarm reviews, but his regal menace earned unanimous praise. At 2005 Comic-Con, fans chanted "Doom, Doom" for hours. He refused breaks, so no child left autographless. His performance remained definitive even after the MCU rewrote box office records. Fast forward to 2024, rumor sites buzzed about a secret multiverse cameo in Avengers: Secret Wars, claiming Julian spent a day on an Atlanta green screen. Studio reps stayed silent, fueling speculation. Whether cameo or myth, the whispers rekindled nostalgia and kept his name trending amid bigger superhero headlines. Local Sydney papers ran features titled Latveria via Bondi, underscoring his ability to pivot from political dynasty to comic book royalty.
Personally, more so than just as the actor, obviously he's had a very successful career. Once he moved to the United States and set himself up in Hollywood, he had some really big roles.
The Manhunter's exit. Television's hunger for crime drama birthed FBI Most Wanted in 2020. Casting Julian as Jess LaCroix, a tracker balancing ferocity and empathy. Unlike Christian Troy's flamboyance, Jess dealt in quiet resolve. The show averaged 8 million viewers weekly, introducing him to audiences who'd missed his FX reign. Between takes, he swapped profiler jargon for surf tips, planning rockaway weekends. 3 seasons in, CBS announced Jess's on-screen death. Press cited creative choice. Forums speculated contract disputes. Few noticed costume designers silently resizing jackets to accommodate a slimmer frame, or his aversion to lengthy chase scenes. Colleagues now confirm treatments had begun. Ever professional, Julian honored every call time until the last slate on March 8, 2022, where Jess's folded flag foreshadowed the secrecy he kept from the world. Industry analysts noted McMahon's departure triggered debate about actor transparency, foreshadowing discussions that would erupt after his death. Quiet Camo, Private Pain. Behind studio lights and red carpet flashes, Julian orchestrated his life like an undercover mission.
Like Charmed, and obviously going into his own series as well. I think there was an FBI missing persons unit, which he actually was the lead in. And I think for a lot of those roles, he played an American. He always used an American accent. So I think a lot of Americans probably thought he was an American, but of course.
First, he assembled a circle of 5. Wife Kelly, his longtime manager, a Florida oncologist who agreed to house calls, Dylan Walsh for moral anchor, and a childhood surfer friend sworn to silence. Everyone else, including agents, publicists, even his own mother, remained blissfully unaware. He insisted on code names in text threads. Chemo appointments appeared on his calendar as board meeting drills. His treatment routine was a strange ballet of discipline and denial. Monday dawns began at 5 a.m. with diaphragm breathing. By 6, he cycled on a stationary bike, IV poles shadowing each pedal stroke while Miles Davis riffed in the background. Nurses called the setup Tour de Chemo. On stronger days, he'd paddle out into the Gulf at sunrise, body trembling but spirit defiant, declaring, "Saltwater's still the best antiseptic." Between infusion cycles, he devoured oncology journals, marking pages with sticky notes labeled plot twists. He drafted questions for doctors the way he once prepared interview cue cards: efficient, pointed, relentless. When neuropathy stabbed his fingertips, he switched to voice dictation, narrating fragments of future scripts he vowed to pitch once this side quest ends.
Back here in Australia, we realise he is from a pretty prominent family and had a long career here too.
Yeah, multi-talented man indeed. No doubt the tributes will be pouring in throughout the day. Have you heard from many of his friends and colleagues?
As side effects intensified, Julian converted a guest room into a sensory bunker. Himalayan salt lamps cast ember glows, ocean surf ambience thundered at hurricane volume, and blackout curtains sealed daylight away. Friends who managed to FaceTime him saw only spinning ceiling fans. He angled the camera so pallor, adhesive patches, and lost brows stayed hidden. He refused pity. Vulnerability, yes. Spectacle, never. Yet humor remained his armor. He taped a sign above his bed, "You're still the director." Each morning, he recited Kristen Troy one-liners to keep diction sharp, then followed with Hamlet's "What a piece of work is man," to remind himself he was more than flesh. Hospice staff caught him coaching fellow patients on audition tips between IV bags. "Project from the diaphragm, darling, even when it's bruised." The private hours birthed legacy projects. He recorded voice notes for his teenage daughter, surf etiquette, body image pep talks, how to tune a Gibson without snapping strings. These weren't farewells, they were future conversations cued in the cloud. He penned letters to anonymous cancer patients, tucking them into waiting room magazines. Unsigned messages of stubborn hope. But masks crack. By November 2024, even oversized hoodies couldn't hide weight loss. At a charity Zoom gala, bright ring lights silhouetted gaunt cheeks. Chat columns flooded. Keto or new role? Julian winked. Just shredding for a monster wave. Fans cheered. Rumor mills pivoted. And the secret held a little longer. January 2025 delivered crueler tides. Morphine blurred memory, so he traded it for guided meditations voiced by Benedict Cumberbatch. "Sherlock walking me off the ledge," he joked. Mindfulness slowed panic, but insomnia prowled.
Not so much. I think a lot of people are still waking up and hearing the news. In Hollywood, obviously, it's in the afternoon where Deadline's reported this, and there's been a couple of people from the business who have come out and said it's a terrible shock. I think a lot of people weren't aware that he was unwell.
On moonlit nights, he wheeled the IV pump onto the balcony, stared at the black gulf, and whispered Rilke, "Let everything happen to you, beauty and terror. Just keep going." He understood Hollywood would feast on any leak. Guarding privacy meant owning the final draft of his story. "Let them analyze the roles, not my blood counts," he told Kelly, squeezing her hand like a stage cue. She nodded, production partner to the end, the last premiere. South by Southwest loves surprises, and March 10, 2025 delivered. Julian glided down the surfer red carpet in a navy tux. Thinner, yet incandescent. He joked with Nicolas Cage about paddling out for method research, and critics described his performance as a Taoist shark in human skin. The Q&A ended with a standing ovation. Nobody imagined it was his final curtain call. Post-festival, he bought a modest Clearwater condo, requesting only 3 hospice items: a Bluetooth speaker for jazz, the nip-tuck pilot still, and a battered surfboard leaning like a sentinel. Hospice nurses said he watched Gulf sunsets in quiet awe, whispering lines from Ralki about living the questions long enough to live into the answers. Legacy echoes. Within 24 hours of his death, Tributes sailed the internet. Netflix added In Memory of Julian McMahon to Nip-Tuck. Hulu curated Faces of Doom. Australia's Prime Minister honored him as proof Australian talent shapes global culture. Marvel fans launched a petition to dedicate the 2025 Fantastic Four to him, surpassing 500,000 signatures. Comic artists drew Doom gripping a surfboard etched 1968 to 2025. Critics re-evaluated his catalog, noting how he humanized villains: Cole Turner's tortured demon, Doom's regal tyrant, Lacroix's haunted agent. Journalism students dissected the media blackout as a masterclass in controlled narrative, concluding that genuine autonomy in the digital era might demand rigorous silence. Industry analysts suggested McMahon's passing exposed a generational divide. Older fans mourned formative television, younger viewers discovered him through algorithm-driven homepages, and Sydney papers kept pairing childhood parliamentary images with glossy Hollywood stills, reminding the world that reinvention, not lineage, defined him. Conclusion. Julian McMahon's story folds like a perfect wave, cresting fame, a sudden hush, and an echo that refuses to fade. He taught audiences to relish complexity, love villains, question heroes, and respect the private selves behind public masks. By choosing secrecy over spectacle, he issued a final challenge: value craft above gossip. In a world where clicks measure worth, Julian wrote his own metric: dignity. And that, more than any award or box office figure, may be the legacy that endures.